There's so many of us on this morning, I wasn't sure who to bring on. I'm like, wait, who am I clicking on?
Which box do I click?
That's kind of where I was this morning. So how are you this morning, Mr. Mike?
I'm good. Aren't you excited, Jenny? Look, the stock market is going through the roof. The Federal Reserve, our best friends ever. I told you I'd give you a little economic update. Now, did you hear what they decided to do on Tuesday?
No.
Most people don't know. This is the first time it's happened in probably 20, 30 years.
Okay.
They went ahead, they issue our debt. They give us all our money. They issue our debt. Well, they decided to go ahead and because no one else, we get our money because other countries and places buy our treasuries, right? Okay. No one else is wanting to buy our treasuries. So the Federal Reserve, who prints our fake money, is now decided they're going to go ahead and buy our treasuries for us to make sure we can maintain our liquidity in our market. So basically, just to break that down in common layman's terms, let's say you have a credit card that's completely maxed out, 100%. You owe $100,000 on your credit card. Chase Bank says, hey, we want you to keep spending, Jenny. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to pay your credit card down for you so you can just keep spending. You don't have to pay it back, but we'll just increase your credit line and we'll go ahead and we'll just make payments for you until you can make some payments for yourself. Basically, that's what they're saying.
You can't be serious.
Yeah, that's it's first time in like 20, 30 years they're doing it. But if we don't have the mechanism to sell our debt to other countries like China and Russia and Europe and export our debt everywhere else, then they're just going to step in and buy it. So the same people giving us the loan is making the payment and buying that in the same vein.
Is that what we call a one-stop shop?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I could not help that. Well, I just read something yesterday about they have narrowed or they have actually come to figure out the 10 banks that helped sink Trump.
Oh, really? I need to see that. You need to send that to me.
Yeah, and it was Chase, of course, is on there.
Oh, yeah. All the mega banks, I'm sure.
It was mainly all the mega banks. There wasn't anybody that I didn't, get. But the whole point is, and the guy who wrote the article, I read it on PJ Media, and the guy who wrote the article was like, okay, so bottom line is, if you really need to do a transaction that's important, don't do it through money. You just go do cash or something else, but stop
while it's still here.
Yeah, but they've got to stop. We got to stop using these people in electronic.
Yeah.
All they're doing is going, oh, I see that you're buying this and this and this. And it's just,
this is going to stimulate
that.
Juju. Yeah. This is just really going to accelerate that inflation that we're feeling, because you're just, not only are you, we can't even service the debt. We're already paying $1 trillion a year just in interest. Yeah. Well, now the same people that are loaning the money. We're expanding that at an exponential rate now because no other country is buying that. It's like crazy. It's just crazy. There's no financial sense to
But
any
we
of
live in crazy town.
it. Yeah,
So I decided I was going to start a new book because I just finished the other book that I was reading. So I decided I was going to read A Brave New World because I've never actually read that one. So I had some.
We're heading right there. You want to talk about heading somewhere?
I honestly don't know how you can't consider Huxley and 1984. I'm drawing a blank for some reason. Who wrote 1984?
Oh,
how embarrassing.
You're making me blank out now.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, I don't know how we don't consider them. I'm going to try some what is this one? Focus. My little oils. See if I can get me to focus.
Well, Huxley's brother was a big globalist anyway.
Yeah, he was Darwin's bulldog. Yeah. But no, I mean, reading it and I was, crying in the car going, oh, for Pete's sakes, how are we not right here? How are these guys not prophets?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I think we've talked about recently that I think we feel like we're a little bit prophetizing, whatever. We're like prophets. So we've had some issues with the county election board in Oklahoma and the state election board.
Having issues with elections in Oklahoma? Are you sure?
Well, no, I forgot. They're the most secure in all of the nation. And we're a red state. And
red state Christian. Oklahoma. Yeah. We have paper ballots. I mean, just because they happen to be tallied in a computer doesn't mean that there's no issues. I mean,
I forget these things. Thank you for setting me straight. So I have an old friend. He's not old. Sorry, Rick. He's not old. I have a friend that I have had for a long time, Rick Moore, and we kept in touch he was in on the Common Core thing. That's how long old Rick's been around in politics in Oklahoma. And we've kept in touch. And he sent me something the other day that really just kind of bothered me quite a bit because our friend Wendi had been talking about the fact, and we did part of a podcast with Wendi where she was talking about the fact that people can pick up the voting machines the night before the election. And so what happens if they're in somebody's car? Or, I mean, what can happen here? There's no security necessarily in some of those. And so we talked about that. And I'm going to bring Rick on here this morning so we can talk to him. Good morning, Rick. How are you today?
Good morning, Jenny. How are you?
I am fine. So I didn't want to talk behind your back or in front of you or whatever that is. So it's time to bring on Rick. All right. So Rick, what happened here?
Well, basically you pick up, I'm a county election official and I'm a roamer. So I go anywhere in the county and I serve in any of the positions. In this particular one, we were down at 305 at the bridge in Mustang, and I was the inspector there, which you kind of pick up the machine and supervise everything. And I went and picked up the machines, and basically they give them to you the day before, and they just ride around in people's cars. I mean, I'm not sure everybody knows how the elections actually work, but you pick up the machines anytime between 8 and 5 the day before the election. So, I mean, a machine could be riding around in somebody's car for, 20 hours.
Are these volunteers? Are these going in like volunteers' cars? Or these state workers' cars? Or who's
No, they're all volunteers. So they're just in any car that comes up there and they have your name and everything. And, I've been an election official for a long time, and they really don't do any background checks or anything. I mean, it's such need of election officials. Basically, if you come down there,
if you're a warm body and you're breathing,
absolutely. And I mean, and this is kind of an aside, but they're looking at actually using county employees in the future to be election officials because they claim they can't get enough election officials. So you go down there and Yeah, they pick up the machine. They give you all the ballots. They give you the machine. So you can have this machine 18 hours in your possession, right around in the trunk of your car or whatever. And, under the best of circumstances, I'm sure it's fine. But, if there's nefarious intent somewhere, then, who knows what could happen? Because, you actually have all the ballots. They're not sealed in a box. They're in open boxes until they've been voted. And the machine... And actually, when I got my machine this time, it was set incorrectly. It was showing a time of 7 p.m. instead of 7 a.m. when I turned it on the next morning. So they actually had to replace the machine the next morning, which is kind of scary in my opinion. The machine was programmed wrong. It came to me programmed incorrectly.
So what happens if somebody doesn't notice that it's programmed wrong?
Who knows? It would show all of the votes coming in after 7 p.m. on election day. So who knows exactly what would happen? I mean,
here's just one. Here's another thing on that, Rick. That's just a date that you happen to notice. What about all the other nuances within the machine that could be programmed wrong that you would never even know about?
Oh, exactly. And I don't know that it'll, they send a report out, everybody check your machine because we found one that's incorrect. I mean, they just, I don't know how many other machines could have been incorrect as well.
Well, so let me just stop right here and make a point. We're asking questions. We're not calling any election officials out or saying anything. And I have to say this because our election officials follow us around and follow social media and check up on us. So good morning, guys. How are you? But it's very important to ask these questions. And it's interesting because I haven't really watched Glenn Beck in a long time, but somebody sent me a link to his podcast from this week that he was leaving open for 24 hours, and it was on election integrity. And he said exactly the same thing, that what's happening at the federal level is that they're considering questions or any discussion about election integrity or anything else. The feds are actually considering this like misinformation. And so they're really cracking down on this to states, and they're talking about it at the federal level. And, Beck is like, well, wait a minute, what happened to the point of us asking questions? I mean,
right.
We don't even get to ask questions because now all of a sudden, if we ask questions, we're spreading election misinformation and we're going to get in trouble. So I just want to say that now we're asking questions. And if that's a problem, I think everybody who's watching and everybody who watches this after it's live should start questioning your officials. Because If we can't ask questions of our officials, then we live in a fully Marxist society. And that's the way it is. So I just needed to say that. Now, so the machine wasn't programmed right when you picked it up anyway. And the reason why I threw this slide back in was because here's what we wanted to talk about initially. So this little picture there in the middle, and I can't pull it in by itself. But this is a picture of the back of your car, isn't it, Rick?
Right.
So tell us a little bit about the picture of the back of your car here.
Well, that's all the things you need to run a precinct, all the documents, all of the election machine, everything. And you can pick that up as early as 8 o'clock the day before. And, I want to trust everybody and all that. But I mean, that machine is out in the world for up to, 18 hours or something like that. And, it's got clips and seals and tape and all that. But, if somebody wanted to mess with it, who knows? I'm not saying they do, but yeah, how many of the machines are floating around in Oklahoma on election day? I mean, I don't know right off the top of my head how many precincts there are, but.
Well, let's look at it like this. We had an alarm on our house for a while, right? Lots of people have alarms on there. They're not expecting that people are going to break in, but there's always the crazy person who might, right?
Mm-hmm. And and that sits in there and they float around in people's cars or garages or whatever for 20 hours before the election. And those boxes, I mean, they're blank ballots, but they're not sealed or anything. I mean, it's just all that stuff is in there. And, and then it came programmed wrong on top of that. And when I took it back, they were real concerned about rechecking the serial number and all that. And there was a picture I posted somewhere that they actually had the sheriff's deputy walk in with me and recheck my machine at the end of the day, which nobody's ever done that before. I don't know. It's because they replaced the machine. Because when I started up the machine in the morning, I looked at it and the time was wrong. So I called them and they brought it, so we didn't use that machine. It just sat there and all the ballots were just put in the box until the new machine arrived. And the machine came and they started that up, and they were real concerned about the security of that machine because they checked it. They took me into the office with the sheriff and the election supervisor from Canadian County, and looked at the machine, looked at all the numbers and everything. And I just thought that was kind of odd. I mean, they've never done that before, when you usually just drop it off in a line outside, but they had me come in and actually examine the machine, checked all the numbers, and had the sheriff right there because they supervise election night. So the sheriff was in there making sure that the machine was right. And then they pulled out pretty much that same picture you have up there and said, "Did you post this?" I said, "No, I didn't post it." But they were very concerned about the information about that being out, but not really the stuff being out there. But they were concerned about me telling anybody about it, which I thought was kind of interesting.
So how did Wendi, because Wendy's name is on this, did Wendi take when you took a picture of it, did Wendi take that picture and she posted it? Is that what happened?
No, I actually we're in an election integrity chat on Signal, and I had posted, this is all sitting. I mean, those are sitting in the hundreds of precincts. There's hundreds of those in that same situation around the state with the machine, all the materials and the ballots. I mean, that's just how they do it. And, I just thought a lot of people probably don't understand that that's exactly how it's done. So I was just sharing that. And then Wendi shared it on, I think she put it on another platform, but I mean, it's true information. I don't know why there's any problem with it. You know what I mean?
But the point that we need to dig out here is election officials are scouring social media.
Absolutely. I think
for election posts, right?
And they knew it. I mean, by the time I returned the machine, they had it printed out, and he was holding his hand and asked me about it. The election secretary in Canadian County, which I thought was a little, I mean, at the end of the day, they took me, my machine, a sheriff, and printouts of the document into a room separate from everybody else and questioned me about it, which, to somebody maybe not as experienced could have been very intimidating. I mean, you got a sheriff with a gun and, the election officials waving papers in your face saying, "What's the deal with this? What did you do?" And I said, "Well, it's all true information. I don't know what's, but yeah, they were they were concerned about it enough that during all the chaos of turning in the machines, and then the election day, they were pulled my machine and me and the election secretary aside to have that conversation.
Well, we don't want you spreading misinformation.
Right. And I try very hard. Everything I mentioned is absolutely true. I mean, we're not making it up.
Well, and I guess that goes back to what we said at the beginning, right? So we can't ask questions. That's where we are now. So you ask a question, you post something that's true, you're going to have a sheriff show up and intimidate you.
And I'm not sure that particular sheriff's deputy was intending to intimidate me, but the sheriff's deputy, the election secretary, pulled me and all of my stuff from my election that day into a separate room and questioned me about it. Definitely.
Sorry, that's intimidating.
Yeah, how what's the necessity of actually having to have law enforcement there? On top of it.
Somebody. I'm not easily intimidated. I've been doing this a long time, but yeah, that could have scared the crap out of somebody. No doubt.
Well, just another question. So, have you, when this all happened, did you talk to your election secretary at the county and say, hey, do you see my point here? I mean, these things are left out online. I mean, that there might be a security issue. Do you think there's anything was there any discussion about actually solving the problem, or was the discussion just about you, Rick, need to keep your trapper shut because you're spreading misinformation?
Well, they never actually told me not to do it, but they had it all printed out in paper, and they asked me if I knew Wendi and, where'd this picture come from? So, yeah, I mean, it could have been intimidating. I'm not easily intimidated.
That's almost a loaded question. I mean, who doesn't know Wendi?
That's hysterical.
I want to ask Rick, just on the chain of custody, because you said, is the computer itself, you said it's sealed or it's got some kind of seal or something on it? Like if you open that prior to the day of the election, like you pick it up, it's in your car. Let's say you're a bad guy, you're a nefarious guy, you take it in your house and open it up. How would they know that you opened that up? I mean,
well, it's got, security tape and all that over the components. It's got the hard drive that they claim's never hooked up to the internet, but that information's transferred from the county election boards to the state somehow. You know what I mean? They don't physically carry the hard drive into the county. Yeah. So, I mean, it is on the internet at some point. And, I don't know who handles all that. I mean, I don't know that whole process, but somehow it gets from that hard drive on my machine to the state election board on that same night. I know they don't drive them in from Woodward or whatever.
Well, and in terms of, so what I saw when I was at the county, because they actually did give me a tour one night. And so the machines come in, they take the machines, they bring the machines in, and in one room, they actually take the drives out and then they download that information. So in from what I know, it's not being connected to the internet. From what I saw, they bring it in and then they download, but maybe I'm missing something.
Well, I mean, in Oklahoma County, that's easy enough. But I mean, how's Beaver County getting their stuff in there and having election results at 8:00? You know what I mean?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So the county, all of the information goes into the county and then they take that out. But yes, the counties do electronically transmit that information to the state. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, somehow they're claiming that it's never transmitted, but I mean, that's the only way it's going to get in.
Well, I was told on that same day that it's transmitted via a secure, like a special secure line. And I guess the point of the matter is, and part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on, we spend a lot of time believing things because other people say them. I don't know how much time we spend testing things here in Oklahoma. I don't know, that maybe there is some, but the point of the matter is if you just tell me, Rick, well, it doesn't go out on the internet, it's a secure line. Okay, well, you can tell me that, but has it been tested? Has a hacker tried to hack in? Have we actually done that test to make sure? And I don't know that they have or they have not, but I'm saying these are questions that need to be asked. And, what you were doing, simply asking questions. I mean, we've seen this. I mean, shoot, I told them they weren't following the law and I get fired,
right.
And then you've got Robin Carter who, puts up a meme. It's not a meme I would have put up, but she put up a meme. It's her First Amendment right. And then she got swatted. So, I mean, I think we're collecting more and more information that says that, I'm not sure we're going about this the right way. If we have questions, the questions need to be resolved. And Rick, exactly. I don't think you got those questions resolved to your satisfaction. Did you?
Nobody answered any questions. I mean, they waived copy printouts of Wendy's post on Telegram in front of my face and said, "Did you do this?" It's like, well, my name's not on it anywhere, but I mean, that was clearly my election machine.
So that sounds to me like
my numbers. You know what I mean?
That sounds to me like deflection. So we're going to put something off back on you,
Right.
so that we don't have to answer the questions that we're being asked. That's what it sounds like to me.
Right. And those machines are in the back of people's cars, their trunks. I mean, I don't know how many precincts there are all over Oklahoma, but there's hundreds. And so there's hundreds of election machines out in the world at any given moment on election night. And, I would hope that everybody's honest and truthful and, has no nefarious intent. But those machines are out there all night, all over Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, and Rick, can you back on that little custody issue? So can you open the machine and plug it in prior to, or would you have to break like a security seal to actually open that case?
No, you could plug it in there. I mean, you can't get to the workings of it. It's sealed up as far as like the hard drive in it that comes out sealed, but the case itself, you can open it up and plug the machine in and all that.
Well, I'm just wondering if you can electronically, plug into that machine, whether it's USB or serial cable or some. I mean, I'm just wondering if someone has that ability. I mean, I don't know.
I'm no computer expert, but I mean, theoretically, the hard drive is locked in there, and that's like the electronic ballot box or whatever they call it. It's taped in and it's locked in, and it's got a security tab on it. So, I mean, counterfeiters can do anything, but I mean, it's probably as secure as they can make it.
Yeah.
Well, Rick, we've got Wendi and Amber on waiting because we've got to discuss yet another issue about elections in Oklahoma. But I really do appreciate you coming on. And if you want to hang out in the green room in case we, have another question, great.
Yeah,
but thank you so much for this, because I think people are not understanding where we are.
Right. I mean, just all of our voting machines are riding around in people's trunks for 20 hours before the elections. I mean, just who knows where that's all going.
Yeah.
But if you make a
I have a question for you. I have a question for you, Jenni. In your capacity on the election board, let's say one of those hard drives was tampered with. I mean, obviously, I guess you wouldn't know until it came back to the election board or whoever's going to open the case and take the drive out. But what's the check and balance on there? I mean, is it only like the county election official that opens that and sees that? I mean, how would we know? How would anyone else know if a machine was ever tampered with? Like, would you see that, Jenni? Would you see them open?
No, because it's not done. It's not done in front of other people. And I'm just going to talk to you about what I saw, because that's what I can talk about. But the machine came out, they took the machine back into this room where they have all the machines stored kind of on the wall. And so they take the machine in, there's like a thing that they use to unlock the part that comes out, the drive. They unlock that and they bring it in, and then it goes, they check it in, and then it goes, it's, interjected into the system or whatever. And so, and I'm trying to think, all I can remember. So let me just say, all I can remember is I remember seeing the machine come in. I remember them seeing them unlock it. And then, to be honest, I'm not really sure what happens after that, but I can tell you that it was done in a room with just all of the IT guys, and there wasn't anybody else in that room. So that's all I can tell you.
And there could be drives from anywhere. I mean, there's no election officials actually on that. Well, last year, they forgot to count a whole machine. I mean, the election secretary lost her job over it, but somehow a whole machine did not get counted. I mean, they didn't open it up. They didn't take the hard drive out. They forgot about it.
And this was in your county?
Canadian County. Yeah, I mean, it was a legal issue. I mean,
wow.
I think she got fired over it, but it's still, if it can be done, I mean, that's kind of scary that a whole machine could just be missed in an election count.
Well, and I guess I don't understand. It was the whole thing about, you know, me getting fired. What is the problem with people who are on the election boards being able to watch this procedure?
Yeah,
Why is that
That's their
such a
job.
hard thing? Why do we have to have such pushback over that in one way or another? That alone, and to me,
It's
is
straight
what
up
concerns
intimidation.
me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rick, it's good to see
Thank
you.
you so
And I'm
much for
going to,
everything you guys do.
well, thank you. And thank you for doing what you do. And thanks for getting with us on this. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rick. Okay. So that was super interesting. And, but now I want to bring in, I'm going to bring in Amber first. Good morning, Amber.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
I did that really fast. I'm sorry, Amber. That's my fault. I'm like, I'm going to bring in Amber. She's not ready, but I'll bring her in anyway.
That's okay.
How are you today, by the way?
Good. Good. Sitting outside in the backyard. So you may hear the chickens and you might see flies flying around, you know, being on property. So,
Well,
but doing good. It's beautiful out.
yeah, well, that rain helped. So I'll bring in Wendi. Are you ready, Wendi? Okay.
Oh, sure. Ask her.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I like
Wendy,
her.
are you ready? Amber, boom.
I totally did really fall down that bad. So sorry about that, Amber. Okay. Now that we've had our fun, let's get into what we really need to talk about here. So, for those of you who may not know, if you run for an elected office in Oklahoma and somebody is also running for that elected office and you don't believe that they should be running for that elected office, meaning they don't really live in the district, or, you know, they haven't satisfied the criteria for running, you as a candidate can actually contest their candidacy. And there was a contest of candidacy, 2 of them actually, and these are held by the Oklahoma State Election Board. So not a county board, but the Oklahoma State Election Board that oversees the county election boards. And they're the ones that actually oversee these contests of candidacy. I did not see it, but somebody tipped me on this. And the first person that I thought about, honestly, the first person I thought about was Amber, because I was like, Amber is, I thought she'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. So I sent it to Amber. And then after I sent it to Amber, I sent it to Wendi. And I was like, okay, Wendi, so you confirm, you tell me what you think is going on here. And both of you said the same thing. So I'm going to play just a second. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and play just a second of this contest of candidacy hearing so that people can kind of see what was going on. So give me 1 second to pull this in. All right, and let me run it. Okay, this is Clay Stairs over here on the left. And this is AJ. Why am I having a brain fart on AJ's last name?
Ferrati.
Thank you. This is AJ Ferrati, who is actually the attorney for Clay Stairs in this particular contest. And I've got no sound.
But then I wasn't clear on what we were doing with that at this point, so we haven't actually provided it yet, but I'm happy to have that transferred from Mr. Kraft's computer into a data stick that we would call Exhibit A, and we would refer, and what that is specifically is the election data warehouse data that was reviewed by Mr. Kraft and his team, and it was retrieved on Tuesday of last week.
Okay, so I'm going to stop that right there, and I'm going to say, so Amber, where did the information come from that the team used?
The election data warehouse, which the acronym EDW, it's from the state election board, and It's part of the MESA, MESA system, where all of the voter rolls are housed.
Okay. So they went into the voter rolls because Wendi, did you ever find out exactly how many people had to be in the district? I think it was, they had to get, okay, let me back up. I'm going crazy. So if a candidate wants to contest, depending upon what county you live in, or is it district, either one, you have to get a percentage of the actual votes cast in is it the presidential election, Amber, or just the last election?
No, it's not. From my understanding of it is that it's not based on votes cast. It's based on the registered voters in that particular, in this case, it's House District 66.
Right.
Okay. So he had to get a certain percentage of the House district voters?
Correct.
Okay. And it's either that or pay $500.
Correct. In this particular race, yes.
Okay.
And that would be, from what they stated on the video, that would be a requirement of 483 signatures at minimum. And the Libertarian candidate and his team got 528 signatures.
Okay. And he did that instead of just paying the $500 to become a candidate.
Yeah, and his explanation in the video of why he did that was excellent.
And can you just basically say what it was?
Yeah, so paraphrasing, he chose to go that way because really it's civic engagement, and we need more people engaged. And one of the ways to do that as a candidate is you can go to the people and they can gain an understanding that it doesn't take money to get on a ballot to run.
That is excellent, actually. Okay, so Wendi, you told me before we came on something. There was a thunderstorm last night and knocked out the connection to my brain. You told me about how many. What was it that you oh, I remember now. You said that on the information that they put out, it just said that you had to get so many. Explain that to me again, because I'm faltering.
I am trying to figure out exactly what we're referring to here on that, because I don't recall.
You said that on the sheet for contest, it's not specific about where the voters can come from. Isn't that what you said?
Yes, there's actually a question. There was a question about whether or not the registered voters had to live within the district or not, and there was conflict between the two laws. It appeared from the testimony of the witness that was the genealogy person that was checking these things and going and collecting signatures for this candidate. The way he was reading the law in one place, and then the way that they were reading the law somewhere else. And in the video, they do go through that and they do read the law. It's Title 26, Section 5, I believe, 114 or 112.
112.
112 that talks about the registered voters and the qualifications for the signatures. In one place it says registered voters, and then in another place they talk about registered voters in the district. That was confusing to myself as well. So you could interpret that one of a couple of different ways, I suppose, to figure out exactly whether you could just have registered voters.
Well, but the point is,
it's not registered voters in the district.
The point is, it's not clear, right?
Well, part of that, you guys,
not clear, but Amber, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Part of that is because it was the election laws in the OS 26, and then they also referenced the administrative code. And the problem is what we talked about it before. It talks about signatures in the administrative code. The problem is we have administrative codes that are violating the election laws.
Yes, Exactly. And I wondered if that was part of the problem, if they may have been quoting code instead of the actual title. And that happens all throughout elections. There's this big long administrative code, and there's what Title 26 says, and then there's what code says after. And it does get very confusing because they do conflict.
Okay, so I want to try to drill down to this issue, because I just think that this is, honestly, I think this is huge. So Amber, when you watched the video and I called you back and I said, so, what did you think about that? What were your first thoughts just after watching the video?
Well, the first initial thoughts are that, first of all, we had the everyone had to put their declaration of candidacy in between April 3rd and 5th, right? So in my brain, you should be taking the voter rolls from around that date to legitimize whether somebody is legitimate voter in House District 66 in this case.
Okay, now you've talked to us about this before, but I want to illustrate this brilliantly for the people who are watching. Do voter rolls change daily?
Voter rolls update every 24 hours, and I've even seen them change on Sundays.
Okay. What happens when those voter rolls update? You're talking about people go off because, like my mom, I had to call them and have her removed, right? So
Right.
People go off, but then also people come on because they become registered voters, right?
Correct. Yeah, for
Okay.
a myriad of reasons, right? Change of address, move out of district, out of state, etc.
Okay. So on the day that they filed for candidacy, that's when we should look at them. And I think that's a valid concern. Okay, so what else?
And so what I notice is that, first of all, I know that there's such a short time frame in these filings for, to contest candidates. But I really think the very beginning of it was such a mess, because if the state was going to require what Clay Stairs was going to be submitting as evidence, that should have been provided to the other side, and vice versa, prior to that hearing, so it didn't waste everybody's time. And it kind of looks like a train wreck at the very beginning.
Interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
And go ahead.
Okay. And what they said was that Holly Gerard had pulled the data the Tuesday before, which would be April 9th. But April 9th data, even though it's probably, pretty close to what the 3rd through the 5th data would have been each day, I would have been downloading that information prior and not use the date after the file of candidacy to check those people that signed the petition.
Okay.
To verify if they're voters.
Okay. Now let's go to, because they said at the beginning that they took this information from the voter data warehouse.
Correct.
So what was the contention? Because the state board got quite irritable.
Well, I'll tell you, there was a little piece in there that was talked about by Kraft, and he referenced the GOP data center, and they asked questions about that. And that's where the election data warehouse, the voter rolls, get uploaded. But that's not an accurate list from the GOP data center, because that's not uploaded every day as the voter files are being put in.
Okay.
And, oh, sorry, asked me again.
So they were talking about that they accessed basically the state voter rolls to get this information.
Yeah, which is a legitimate, anybody can have access to it.
Okay.
So they can go, but if they're going to verify the information, it has to come from House District 66.
Okay.
Right. And what I noticed from it is through the conversations, they ended up pulling 3 people off that they had contested that weren't legitimate in the thing. And I have to tell you, there was something odd, because it talks about that the state election board doesn't have a requirement to verify the signatures and the voters. right? They talked about that. But the Secretary of Elections pointed out one individual, a David Duval, and he called him a junior.
Okay.
Well, I went in, now, mind you, I don't have that day's data, but I pulled from the 21st of April. And yes, there are 2 individuals at the same address with that name, but nobody's a junior.
Okay.
It's just these little tiny things that make you wonder. And I'm also struggling with how the libertarian side,
who I believe
they,
is on watching right now. So
yeah, I'm curious as to how they found the birth dates of those individuals on some of them when that's not because I haven't seen the petition, what it looks like. But if there's no requirement to share your birth date, then how did you verify that individual was connected with a birth date? And it's not a valid way to do it if it's not, you know what I mean? It just, things aren't matching up. And I get that people are trying to research, but the end all be all has to be what's in the election data warehouse. End of story, because that's the authority of the people that are able to vote in the state.
Okay. And I guess the question was, did it seem to you like the challenge that came using the state voter data portal information, was that good information, did you feel like, or what was your thought about that?
Okay, so we talking about the voter portal itself or the election data warehouse?
No, I'm sorry, the election data warehouse. And you're right, because I've got to use the correct terms, and it's hard sometimes to remember what's what, because the voter portal is where I go in to get information.
Correct. So the election data warehouse is a very good source. It's the authority on who's registered to vote. So that's where you want to pull from. Okay. So I think that they were all trying to do the right thing. It was such a train wreck. And I really felt, I don't think that anybody should be kept off a ballot unless there's something like explosive, right? But based on what the law and how it's written, like my analysis on it is, I think that the state election board ruled incorrectly based on the law.
Okay. So, Wendi, what are your thoughts about that, having seen at least some of that?
Well, yes, the video is 8 hours long for anybody that wants to go in and try to look. So I was looking at this entire, I believe it's about 4 hours long, but they took breaks, in between. And I'm watching this. My initial thought after watching about 30 minutes of it was that this is the poster child that everyone should use and share out that video for the reason why we need to archive the old voter rolls and re-register all Oklahomans to vote. Because I heard all kinds of things like, oh, so-and-so doesn't live at this address. And, oh, yeah, we don't even have a street by that name. And yes, and it's very illustrative of the fact and the things that Amber has been talking about, and I've been talking about for 3 years, as well as others. The voter rolls are a disaster, and it's a darn near impossible to be able to clean them, to have them. If we're going to have contest of candidacy hearings where the state election board is supposed to rule based on information that may be even inaccurate and then can't be verified with any certainty, unless you go out and door knock, which Amber and Oklahoma Liberty Watch actually did in Oklahoma County. And when you have the issues that you have with all the names, with people moving, with people, going in and out, you have streets that don't even exist, you have misspellings, you have people that can't read things, and things are very difficult, then it's basically the poster child of why these roles need to be redone in my estimation. It's very difficult with an inaccurate record. We're using an inaccurate record to make legal and lawful decisions at the state election board level on, on whether or not somebody can run for office. This is very concerning to me as a voter. I would like accurate records to be used to determine the law and whether or not someone is lawfully allowed to run.
So Amber,
can I interject there?
Of course.
To that point, Wendi, just House District 66 from the election data warehouse voter roll pulled on April 21st, 810 registered voters across all party lines do not have voter registration dates. And then now this is a small number, but 6 of those registered voters without registration dates also have no birth date in their file.
Maybe
And
somebody
one of
found
them-
them.
and
Hey,
one of-
wait,
and one
maybe
of
it was
them
like
voted
Cabbage
in
Patch
March.
Kids.
Yeah. And one of these people voted in March. So, and we talked about this, before, having that information in there shows that somebody is valid, and we have laws surrounding, people have to be registered by a certain time to vote.
Well, and that they have to have a valid address, and that they have to have a birth date, and that they have to have all of these kinds of, because otherwise my dog could be voting.
Right.
Well, Amber, we realized back in when we first started working with America's First Audits, the first thing that you and Terry talked about was, and it's in my presentation on election integrity, we have 207,000 registered voters at that time that don't have registration dates across the state. Those are supposed to be invalid registrations. So
invalid electors.
Yes, invalid electors. So these, they should not be allowed to vote. Now, what I heard in the hearing was that this gentleman was outside a polling place getting signatures. And he said that there were people that they were contesting on the other side. He got their signatures outside the polling place. So these people are voting in elections, but their registration is being questioned in a contest for candidacy hearing.
Well, but I also heard in that too was that there's more than one precinct that is able to vote at one polling location. Sometimes they'll have 2 or 3 depending on the size of the precinct.
And then you got to make sure they're getting the right ballots for their elections and everything else. It gets confusing.
Right. And part of this is, I'm just going to give a solution so it doesn't get lost in all this, is the petition itself. I think it would be very helpful for the people that are running for as a candidate. Mm-hmm. It would be nice to have the voter ID number required on that. One, the person can have their voter ID number on them. They can whip it out, right? Or number 2, they can go to the OK Voter portal right there on their phone and look it up and verify what the state has. So that would be also another way of the Libertarian candidate also informing the public and getting them engaged.
I agree. And I think that would be helpful information for them to have as well, so they can verify the signatures are getting at least superficially on the spot if they have their voter ID number, and you can look them up. Yes, I agree.
So I'm still sitting on what you said, Wendi, a minute ago about we're using basically bad data.
Yeah.
How do we solve this problem? Because basically,
well, yeah, what's the hang up? What is the why is there so much opposition to just clearing them out and redoing it? I mean, what is the deal?
They keep saying it's the cost, but if I'm remembering correctly, I mean, it took hundreds of thousands of dollars to send out all those notices in Oklahoma County when they redistricted, right, and added a whole bunch of extra precincts. And oh my gosh, you want to talk about a waste of money? When, how many was it, Wendi? Was it 68,000 came back? What was the number? Do you remember?
Yeah,
65,000 cards were returned just in Oklahoma County.
That's a waste.
Wow.
That's a waste.
But it's not just
it's
a
also
waste.
concerning for security purposes for the election.
Exactly,
think
because that
about
says
it.
to me that there are
Yeah.
65,000 people out there voting that shouldn't be, or
Potentially.
potentially. I mean, that's just
If their registration was returned, we need to go back into the voter portal and make sure they haven't been voting in elections. And check them. I mean, seriously, it defies common sense that we have rolls just in Oklahoma County where you got 65,000 of these cards being returned.
yeah.
And if it's returned, they either don't live at that address. There's no such person. I mean, the reason and the rationale for the return, we don't know. It's
Yeah.
just that the United States Post Office is returning these to the election board saying we can't deliver it for some reason.
I think that would be a reason, if that's happening just in one county, that if you're so worried about the money, then let's start over, do a clean slate, right? And it's because right now we're hemorrhaging money on false information, not accurate.
Right.
And sometimes it's kind of like, you're cleaning out your closet, and you keep adding things in, and it doesn't matter how good you're doing it. It still gets messy, because all the procedures are different.
You still break the bar.
Yeah, because my husband might throw something in there, or my daughters might throw something in there. And so now the procedure is completely changed because not everybody is following it the same. And so now we have a big mess. And the only way to fix it is to clean it out and restart again.
Yes. And if we were to do that, actually, in order to keep them clean, it has to be cleaned out periodically. So say every 5 years, every 10 years upon redistricting, just go ahead and have everyone go down to their county election board and show a photo ID, and then be able to receive a voter registration card and build the rolls, from the people that come down and actually show their ID. If people truly want to vote, they will make that short trip and take that half an hour out of their day and go do that in the interests of having a secure, accurate record and a secure, accurate voter roll, so that we can all be confident that we don't have people that are in the cemetery voting, that we don't have, people that don't exist voting, that we don't have people on a street that don't exist voting.
Okay, but I'm going to stop you there, Wendi, because you're a bigot. I mean, we'll just have to take you off because you're just a bigot. I mean,
it's too difficult. I have to show my driver's license.
Disenfranchising the people who don't have a voter ID, who can't possibly get to their county election board, that fill in the blank.
I'll tell you,
my grandmother always said, "Don't borrow trouble."
Yeah.
Don't borrow trouble. I have to come up with all these
or
ideas.
Don't be a racist. Either one of them.
Be able to do what we need to do for accurate rolls. I'm pretty sure that we can figure out how we can do this in Oklahoma. It's not rocket science, right? So we could probably figure out ways to help people that might have an issue getting down there. And to be serious, I do believe that people should go into the nursing homes and re-register the elderly there that cannot get out, in order to make sure our elderly can vote.
Well, what were you going to say, Michael?
Well, I was just going to say, as an example, you're probably 100% hard-nosed on personally going down there in person. Is that right, Wendi?
I am, only because, we need a photo ID so that we are sure that the people that are voting in Oklahoma and registering to vote are actually citizens and citizens of the state as well. They reside in the state currently. And that would help clear out all the people that have moved out of state, and also people that have moved between counties. So when you archive
that are coming in here illegally by the droves.
Well, what I was
they have driver's licenses.
Yeah. What I was going to mention is my son that just turned 18. We went on the Oklahoma voter portal and we just filled out, his information. Mm-hmm. And used to, you'd have to print the piece of paper out, send it in, all that. Now we just put in his driver's license number and it just matched it all up and it registered him. We didn't even have to print anything out, go anywhere, prove anything, show anything. So I don't know if that's a plus or a minus, but that's what we just did with him just recently. We just went on the portal, put in his, name, address. They matched it all up to his driver's license. He's registered.
Okay. So let's say, for instance, Michael, that I know how to navigate the dark web. I don't even know where to go find the dark web, to be honest with you. But seriously, if I had your son's information, I could do that. And there's no verification that I'm not you. So this online registration is absolutely taking us backwards in security as far as, cleaning up our voter rolls and not bloating them. You can get all kinds of information from all kinds of different sources and pretend to be whoever you want.
Well, and that was something that I was going to add in here. We talked about this. I mean, Wendi, you and I went on the voter portal one day, and we didn't go far enough and got into trouble for, we made a mistake and didn't do that. But we should have made the point.
That's what we do.
Yes. Yeah, we should have made the point, though, that if I get Michael's birth date, or if I somehow get his social security number, if I somehow get, there's a great possibility that I could get into that voter roll.
Yes. And I was actually looking, and I find this fascinating. If I have access, and I do, to the election data warehouse, your name, your birth date, everything you use to register to vote is listed on the voter rolls. I can look up anyone.
Oh my goodness.
I can take that information on the EDW and input it into the voter portal and look up anyone's voter history that I want.
Yeah, we do that all the time, actually.
Yeah. And to verify, to check people, it's part of opposition research too, and say, oh, you didn't vote in so-and-so election, right? It's like, well, I'm sorry. I'm not 100% on voting in every election. So, you're going to tell me that disqualifies me as a candidate. I'm sorry. Most people in the world have missed elections, especially since we don't have them on the same day like we need to.
Correct.
And have them spread out, all through the year. So, yes, Amber.
So something to do with with the voter portal is one of the questions that was asked about, why it was accessed, right, on the during this candidacy hearing is, well, that basically, is that you? Like, you're going in there, isn't there like some disclaimer on there that says you should be the individual that's accessing the voter portal? And you go through a laptop or you go through a phone, and there's nothing sitting right there that's glaring in your face that says, hey, you must be the registered voter to access. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And, it's the playing fast and loose with people's personal information, especially with the issues that we have with identity theft and everything else. If we're giving, and we need access to the voter registration list because they are public record and public information. But I think between the two, there needs to be a little bit more on the voter portal, I think, for people to be able to get into it. And sure, it's just somebody's voter history, and we do want people to check it after every single election and make sure. I have a lady that tells me, she says, Wendi, I never vote by absentee ballot. But for some reason in 2022, they give me credit for voting in the election by absentee. She said, I never vote absentee. I go in and vote in person on the day of the election.
Well, let me make a point about that just really fast.
This is why people need to check their voter history and make sure it's accurate.
Right. And here's the thing. It's data entry. It could have just been an accident. It could have just been an accident, but that accident needs to be fixed, because if it was an accident, look at it like this. That person didn't turn in an absentee ballot that they were credited for. what if there was something nefarious that was going on, because it can happen. And they took
Right.
an absentee ballot and filled in the name for that person because she wasn't voting or hadn't voted, and they thought maybe they could get away with it, whatever, however it is that works, and they turn it in. Well, that's fraud. And if we're not going to examine fraud and look at the rules for possible fraud, well, I don't even know what to say after even saying that.
It doesn't even have to be that, because according to the National Academy of Sciences study that I cite in my presentation, they say right out that every single, our voter registration rolls and our digital information that's on computers, for our elections, are subject to malicious interference. They are very open to being hacked, if you want to use the word hacked or whatever, but they are all open to that being online. So it doesn't even have to be a person, filling out a ballot and sending it in. It could just be information that's being manipulated by someone online. It didn't even have to be that. So someone doing that for her, or a person doing that, it could be somebody manipulating the data in the database online.
Can I go back to the candidacy hearing? One of the things at the very end was, if all this evidence is being presented and we have a board that's making a decision, and it says that their decision is final no matter what, okay, why is the board, they never gave an explanation, a reasoning as to why they were voting the way that they did? Because you had them saying, they're saying like, hey, these people are not legitimate. 3 were removed as being contested, as legitimate on the petition, but they never gave the explanation to anyone as to why they were doing it.
It concerns me anytime I see, officials going into executive session to
right.
They should have to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we would know the reasoning and the rationale behind their decision.
Yeah.
The fact that we have appointed officials that believe it's okay for them to go in and deliberate things away from the public and then come out and render their decision, kind of like from on high up here, and the little peons should not be have access to their deliberations.
Well,
that
here's my question.
Greatly.
Well, here's my question. There are only certain times you can go into an executive session. Is the state election board exempt from the Open Meetings Act or something, so that they can, because I don't remember anything in the Open Meetings Act that says you can just go into an executive session to debate something.
Yeah. Well, if you go to the end of the video there, their lawyer, which they always have on hand, their lawyer gave them the statute by which she thought it was okay for them to enter executive session. We need to look at that statute, see what it says, and then petition potentially the legislature to change it, should it need be, because these people are deliberating. There are 3 individuals. And they are deliberating whether or not a person can be a candidate on a ballot for us to vote for our representation. And we should not have access to their deliberations on that. That greatly concerns me.
Well, and at minimum, even if the executive session is allowed for them to go behind closed doors, right?
Right.
Why are they not giving the reason as to why they are making the ruling?
They should have to do that. They should absolutely have to do that and spell it out for the public when they come back in the ruling. The Supreme Court justices of the United States don't just issue a ruling. Yeah, there are pages and pages and pages and pages of explanations of why they are making the decision that they are made. So even our Supreme Court justices are not exempt from explaining the rationale of their decision making to the public. I do not know why there is any reason why appointed officials should be allowed to do this and then render an edict, basically, and not give the public an explanation for it. These are our elections. These are our officials that will determine the laws that we all have to follow, right? So why we are not allowed to understand why they're going to, potentially not allow a candidate or throw people's names off a petition or whatever. there needs to be an explanation given. They have to be accountable to the public for that. And
Well,
the fact that they are not just blows my mind, to be honest
yeah.
with you.
Well, and here's my thing is if when a candidate is filing and they have the option to do the petition or they have the option to pay the money. And as the libertarian candidate said, he's like, listen, like this is the reason why I did it. It's really about, paraphrasing, civic engagement. And but he's like, not everybody has the money. Nobody, not everybody has the $500 to file. He's like, I have the $500 to file. So my thing is if by law, I don't know if this would be appropriate or not, but as a voter, I wouldn't have an issue with this. I don't think is that if there was some issues with contentions with the petition and there wasn't anything nefarious intentionally done with the voters, it was, everything's not laid out perfect. It wasn't ran perfect, but they, in their good faith, they did their best. It's so to me, the state election board should have ruled, okay, sorry, based on what's being presented to us, we should not allow this petition to go forward. But you do have the option to pay the $500 if you would like to, because there was nothing nefarious, nothing that was intentionally done to keep you off. But then that also, I still think we need to fix the issue with the petitions themselves and people knowing there's no good guidance. I think that's where the breakdown is, right? There's no good guidance from the county and from the state. The county really doesn't have a whole lot of authority in a lot of things. So and what do we know about a poorly ran business? It always comes from the top.
Well, and you know what you said too earlier about, again, something that I don't remember. But you had said something earlier about we need to, the bottom line is we've got to clean up the voter rolls. I mean, and then you said that the OAC, the Oklahoma Administrative Code, doesn't match the law. And it has to, it must. I mean, all the administrative code does is just illustrate, right? I mean, it just says, okay, here are the steps for you to follow this particular law. It can't say anything different than state law does. Right. So we have a couple of really big things. And then you said earlier about if the contest of candidacy, you don't know how many is it the district that you have to get? Is it just the county that you have to get? You said that was completely nebulous too. You couldn't really figure that out. So it seems to me that what we have going on here is
poorly written laws.
Yeah, it's everything seems to be at cross purposes, but then if you ask questions about it or you try to enlighten people about it, then like with Rick Moore, they'll have the sheriff come over and, check you out or whatever. Or
well, right. But what's happening to them, like, and we talked about this 2.5 months ago when we were on, is like what happens to the county and the state when they have a glitch in their system because it was an update, and then me, one of 3 people in our county, percent District 32, received 2 absentee ballots in my name.
Yeah.
What's happening? What's going on with that? The accountability is only on the people that are asking questions, but not to the state. And they just,
What, Amber, is it more of a law problem, or is it more like all this administrative code and there's no check and balance on these administrators and all these policies? I mean, what's the issue?
So I think sometimes, not always, the law itself is written poorly and could be written better. But the administrative code is by far the biggest problem, especially in this situation, because the law is talking about, the voters in the district. Then in the administrative code, it talks about the voters on the, the rolls basically, but then it talks about verifying signatures.
Who has to approve
those signatures in the election data warehouse to verify against?
Right.
Who is the person, or do the senators oversee the administrative code that's created from law? Because I know they do with rules, like they're making the big deal about, Superintendent Walters. Well, you can't make your own rules and we're going to have to look at those or whatever. So I'm wondering, does the Senate or somebody needs to be looking at the Oklahoma Administrative Code and verifying it, cross-checking it with the law that it's intended to enumerate or illustrate?
Well, to me, that's the $1 million question. I know that I heard that there was I think a representative that was kind of looking at administrative laws and stuff. But, what I see time and time again is that the current and past legislators have given the authority to the state election board secretary to make rules, just given over full authority. Right. And so I don't know 100% because I've sorry about that, but it seems to me that may be one way it's getting in, but it's a good question. How do we fix it? And what I also saw was that when they were reading the law and things in that video, that it's 1, 2, 3, not me on the state election board, because their hands always come out clean no matter what, because they have no responsibility, which I think is ludicrous. And that's the reason why this position in particular should not be an appointed position. We, the people, should be able to elect it, right? It's just like our Secretary of State. We're one of the only states where it's not an electable position. It's just appointed. Why?
Right. Well, it always seems strange to me that we have an appointed official that oversees our elections, by which we elect officials to write the,
so he's never been through the process.
Constitutional, actually, but I would argue that their job is not to write laws. Their job is just to enforce the Constitution. That's my position. But as far as Rick is concerned, the issue, I just want everybody, number one, you need a copy of your Oklahoma Constitution. Go get one. But Rick's issue to me, and I think it's very troubling. If everybody would just understand Article 2, Section 22 of the Oklahoma Constitution, I'm going to read it to you, and everybody needs to memorize this, okay? Liberty of speech and press, truth and as evidence and prosecution for libel. That's a slash, okay, because it goes for both. Every person may freely speak, write, or publish his sentiments on all subjects, being responsible for the abuse of that right, and no law shall be passed to restrain or abridge the liberty of speech or of the press. Period. He can write, he can speak, he can publish on anything he wishes. And the fact that he chose, to share something on a chat, there was information that people in election integrity would need to know. And that is, guess what? We're allowed to pick up these machines and everything else the day before. Why would the election board be worried about that? Because
why isn't that public knowledge?
That is public knowledge. The way we handle our elections, transparent to the public. Everything that we do, every process, transparent to the public. Just because there's something that may be questionable, that the public may actually want to have more information about or learn more about, that is in no way should they be worried about that. So the fact that they are waving around a social media post, by the way, it was True Social, that I made regarding this, and I make many posts, of course, regarding Oklahoma elections. There's no reason. I mean, sometimes I wonder if I live rent free in people's heads. If people are watching my social media, that's fine. That is a space I suppose I occupy in some people, but that makes me wonder why. All they have to do is answer the question. That's all they have to do. I don't know why they wouldn't just answer and say, hey, Rick, this is why we do this, or hey, could you explain this to people, or hey, there's something there. I called the state election board when I saw that to verify and double check that was allowed. It is allowed. It's allowed. So it's an allowed procedure. So why are they worried about it? And why is a sheriff's deputy talking to Rick more about something that's allowed?
Well, and let me let me make a point about what happened to me. I mean, let's make the point about what happened to me. So
Right.
I say, hey, this isn't happening. You know, you're not following the law. I tell legislators about it. I post it on my on our website, and then I get fired. And now,
Exactly.
and don't forget, I get fired for producing misinformation. That was one of the things, was me producing misinformation.
Oh, and
Everybody
referred
should
for
know
investigation.
about what's going on.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And
And referred for investigation. You get referred for investigation, but
Yeah.
all you did was point out where you had concerns that the law was not being followed. And that is concerning to me. And I wrote up a Substack for Restore Liberty Oklahoma on that. I believe I also refer to it in the most current publication that would probably take an hour or two to go over anyway, on the data from 2022. We have situations in the state where there is a very real attempt to silence people. Obviously they don't know me. So there's a very real attempt to silence people when it comes to our elections. And everybody knows that without free and fair elections, there is no way that we can determine the consent of the governed. And we all unfortunately know what that means, according to Thomas Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. That is a very real problem. We have to be able to speak. We have to be able to ask questions, and we have to be able to have those questions answered without the authorities coming down on our heads.
well, and
So
let me
one
even
thing
make this
real quick. I was just going to say that I did find it encouraging that the governor's task force did say, what was troubling to me was they had to have a lawyer tell them this, but they cannot write any legislation against people looking into election integrity. We are using our First Amendment rights, and they are not allowed constitutionally to pass any legislation that silences us.
but I'm going to point out one more thing. This is coming from the federal level. I mean, go search it, go reach it, go election misinformation. Go
What did
look
I
at what's
drop?
coming down from the Biden administration. And our state election board is buying onto this, apparently. I mean, I don't see how they're not, if they're doing what they have been doing. So I think that's another part. Why are we listening to why is that happening in Oklahoma?
Well, and
and-
that, that's what I talked about. Terry and I discussed. I'm sorry, Michael.
Well, no, I was just going to make a point real quick, Amber. Back on Jenni, your deal with the election board. Let's not forget that they immediately went into executive session for like 8 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not an employee. There was nothing to protect personal record there. I mean, that entire conversation should have been had in front of all of us that were there at that meeting, which was completely cowardice in every single capacity, in my opinion. Just like I said, I was standing right at the doors. They all walked out. Not one of them would look me in the eyes. They all had their heads down. They all just scurried out right into their little protective state back there behind executive session, in just complete. I'm not even going to say it. But
I don't know about you,
And
but
we
I
don't have
want people
access to
that
the
will
minutes
stand
of executive
confident.
session.
Wait, hold on a second. Amber,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I want people that are going to be working in any capacity in our government of any sort, of any level. I want them to be confident and stand tall and be able to look the people in the eye. Like, when you hang your head or you won't look somebody in the eye, then you're ashamed or guilty of something.
Now what, Wendi?
I was
just saying, it seems to me, as Amber and I were discussing earlier, about the executive session and the minutes, and not giving reasons and rationale to the public for their decisions. I would like to see the minutes of that executive session where they determined that you and Cheryl were, that there were things going on that needed to be referred for investigation. That's very serious. If you are going to come out in public and tell people that you are referring people for investigation, you had better explain to the public your rationale and your reasons for doing so. And that was not done at all. They just announced, this is what we're doing. We're referring it for investigation. This is our decision. See you later. after that marathon session where some of us stayed there all day. I am one of those because I wanted to see what exactly they were going to decide.
Well, and let me make a point because we're going to have to close off here in a little bit, but let me make a point that I know everybody is going to agree with here. So, Amber, you've said, hey, here's the problem, we need to, and Wendi, you both have said, hey, we need to do this. We need to just clear the rolls off. Let's go ahead and get everybody back on. You have, and Eric Roberts, I think, has helped you run a bill like that, right? Hasn't he?
Actually, it was Sean Roberts.
Oh, Sean Roberts.
Is the one that ran the bill, and was that 2021?
2022.
2022. Yeah, and it died.
Okay. So, but here's the thing. And with me, I said, okay, here's exactly how you're not following the Oklahoma Administrative Code. Here's exactly how you're not following Title 26. I'm writing it down for you so that you know. You would think that these people would go, oh my gosh, well, hold on a minute, Jenni, let's go look at this and see if we can figure out what's going wrong. Right. And let's see if we can figure out a way to make that stop. You would think that they would be happy for somebody to tell them, hey, look, this is a problem. We found this out. But instead of being happy about it, instead of being inclusive of the people that they lord over, instead of, any of that, they push back, they shove back, they accuse us of election interference. They fire me for saying, using my First Amendment right and saying what was going on. That should be the biggest concern that everybody should have from the get-go. These people don't want our help, the citizens' help, to do a better job. They just want to push back and shove back. That's a huge issue.
Yeah.
It is. And the thing is we have huge, number one, we've had a voter apathy forever, for a very long time. And by the states, more than just Oklahoma, but when the states are not 100% transparent with the people and finding a path to give that transparency and that truth, and just admitting when some things haven't gone right and saying this is how we are going to fix it. And when they know that there's people out there that care about the people and their right to vote, and is it secure enough? And yes, Oklahoma may be one of the most secure voting states in the nation on voting, but it's not perfect. And there are ways to fix it so that we don't go down the path of the other states. And so if you want voters to trust the state with our vote, you have got to allow us to be a part of the conversation, especially those people that are very analytical minded and can come in and fix things. I'm not great at starting something from nothing, but I am wonderful at coming in and analyzing something and knowing how to fix it.
And I think we need to end it there, because that is absolutely, completely on point. I mean, you just summed everything up. And Wendi, I know, hit your blog up again, because we didn't get a chance to go over the information in your new blog, but you had a lot of good information there. So just give us a 2-minute rundown on it, and let people know where they can go to find it.
Okay, it's loaded. It's on Substack. It's substack.restorelibertyoklahoma.com, I believe, is the website. If you have a Substack account, if you don't have one, you can sign up for one for free, and you can go in and read a lot of people's Substacks. But this latest one, I fulfill a promise that I've made to several groups, and I finally decided to write up the analysis on the 2022 primary election. There is very questionable data that came out of that from the state election board website in real time as the results were being reported by the state election board. We have numbers in the absentee ballot counts that are supposed to be fixed from the get-go. You get absentee ballot count numbers at the beginning of the night for the election. Those are fixed. Those never changed. And I've actually collected data from subsequent elections, and those numbers do not change. However, in June of 2022, within an hour's time frame, they changed twice, and then they changed again by the end of the final count. So just barely changed that time. But it's interesting. I just wrote up the analysis, and I bring up the fact that we have people that are entrusted with investigating themselves regarding Oklahoma elections. The people on the governor's task force, and I would argue that task force was unconstitutional because the governor doesn't have anything to do with the election board according to the Constitution. So why is the governor appointing this task force? You can't, if you want the governor to be involved, you have to change the Constitution. The state legislature cannot write any law that allows them to do that without changing the Constitution. So anyway, the governor's task force was full of people that have been involved in Oklahoma elections for years. That, you know, this whole system, the way it was set up, that's concerning to me. I would like an independent board of people to come in from out of the state and come in and look into our elections. At this point, I was waiting. The reason why I held on to this data is because I was waiting for anyone in the state of Oklahoma in an official capacity to show interest in investigating the actual data that groups like Oklahoma Liberty Watch and Oklahoma Liberty Integrity Group, which, you know, I'm part of, you know, all of the data and all of the analysis that we have made over the past 3 years, no one has bothered to look into that unless they've had people planted into the presentations, which is exactly, you know, which is possible. We don't have election board members. We don't have people coming in and sitting in. We have very few lawmakers. When they do and they see what it actually is, they are very concerned. But then they go up to the Capitol and talk about other people. It's like, oh no, we were told that that's not true. So, you know, we'll just move along here. This is what we get. So I finally decided it was time to, after waiting, like I said, it's been 2 years almost, for someone to look into this. No one has. So I went ahead and published and analyzed the data. So yeah, yes, Amber.
Well, I want to say, as you're talking, I'm thinking, I really appreciate this candidacy, contested candidacy, because we learned a lot from it. And I appreciate the state election board for it being heard, because now we have precedents that anybody can pull the voter rolls from election data warehouse. It can be used in a lawful means by any citizen.
Right. And that's important. So when you get into the election data warehouse, you can get in and you can check out all kinds of things. And if you go to the state election board, I find it heartening. They do publish their the election data, and they do it in real time. So anybody can do what I do, and that is go in throughout election night and download the results. They give that to you. Now, the concern is, of course, with the numbers changing, they're not supposed to change. And, you know, nobody wants to talk to the people that have actually been analyzing the data for some reason. The data can tell a story that people need to look at. So when we talk about elections in Oklahoma being the safest, most secure, well, if they are, you know, that's... you know, it's like I'd hate to see other states, I suppose, because from what we've seen, especially with the voter rolls, and then with this data changing, it's we have serious problems that need to be addressed, and it's being ignored or swept under the carpet, or people, if they don't listen, they can always say that they weren't told, right?
Correct.
So people do not want to take responsibility and stand up and say, we really need to fix this. We keep getting excuses as to why it can't be done. And by the way, Eric Roberts' office did tell me a concern about the National Voter Registration Act. They believe there's a concern there legally with re-registering Oklahomans. I don't see it personally. There is a judge's order or out of Kansas, out of the state of Kansas, but it was never challenged in the Supreme Court. It doesn't mean the Supreme Court refused to hear it. Doesn't mean there was wrong. I want to know why Oklahomans and our legislators are giving authority to the federal government when we're supposed to. Yeah, exactly. So Oklahoma is not shy about having constitutional arguments, right? Oklahoma is not shy about passing legislation that may be controversial with the federal government. Write the legislation, do it, have it done, and then argue it in court if you need to. But I do not see how the court case they are citing actually applies to the re-registration of Oklahomans.
Well, and
guys,
it's not even, I mean, even over and above that,
right.
stop. Elections are supposed to be solely the responsibility of the states.
And
Why
the
are we even
legislature,
allowing the federal government to stick their neck into any of this stuff? Why don't we have legislators who are going, no, 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 no. See, this is Oklahoma. We'll do it our way.
right? And there are a couple of things that the Supreme Court has upheld is the federal government's concern when it comes to elections, but voter registration is not one of them. They have stated over and over again that's the purview of the states, and our legislature can't ignore our state constitution. And this was just a ruling this last summer. Legislature cannot ignore the Constitution when writing those laws.
Well,
So
and in regards to the voter registration, so there's two ways people can register to vote. They can use a national voter registration card that they can download or obtain, right? But when it gets sent in, it goes to the appropriate state. So I don't like that that there's a national one, but it's
Right.
not the federal government that's inputting voters, or it
Right.
should not be, right?
Correct.
Right.
It's the states that have control of that. So why in the world is the federal government have their hands in it, and the state is supposed to be paying for all of the elections, and the counties within the state pay for the elections? Why are we taking money from the federal government to pay for any election in the state of Oklahoma? They're
can't.
taking the money for new machines that Oklahoma is going to get at some point. Like, there's so many different things.
Right. The Help America Vote Act, by the way, is a program. Everyone needs to understand this. When they sit there and cite the Help America Vote Act as federal law, it is a program. We don't have to participate. The reason why it's a program is because they cannot tell us how to run our elections. And according to our Constitution, we cannot take any outside money for Oklahoma elections. The Constitution
Yes,
says
correct.
free. That is unfettered. That is uninterfered with from anything out of state. So the Zuckerberg money that came in 2020, unconstitutional. Any private money coming in from out of the state, unconstitutional. Help America Vote Act money coming into the state, unconstitutional. So
here's the thing.
have this,
we need brave, bold legislators in our state. And if you are not brave and bold, and you can be maneuvered and pitted against one another, and it's not in the best interest of the people, get out.
Yeah.
Get out, and we don't want you representing us.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think that's the problem, because Wendi said something when we got on this morning originally, and I was talking about reading Brave New World. In so many of these systems are completely corrupt because they do the same stuff that you just talked about. I mean, the state election commission, that the governor wanted to put in to talk about the kind of elections that we have, it was all the same people. It was all the people in the government. There's never any outside people. They never allowed me to come in and talk about dark money. They never allowed Amber to come in and talk about, what she found in her county. They never allowed you to come in and talk about Hava money. So it doesn't even matter, because all of this is just the tail chasing the dog, and the people always get left out of it.
That's right. And even if I never contacted someone asking, hey, can I participate? We know by what the state election board has presented, or the Secretary of Elections has presented at OCP, at OCPA and stuff like that, right? That he is well aware of the individuals working in this state that have questions.
Oh, yes. And let me say this, because
reach out to us.
Because I can do this for a fact. So when I was doing my training at the state election board, we finished with the actual training, and then we got a 4-color packet of information, of paper, and it was like that thick. and it was done in 4-color. Would you like to know what it was? It was snapshots of social media posts that they didn't like.
Yeah, they were attacking free speech.
And
even
we're being
though
trained on those.
Yeah.
Oh, tisk, you people out there talking about Oklahoma elections.
Well, and let's
then-
not forget how all the public comment is completely shut down. Wendi, did you get a chance to make any comments when we were in that hearing for Jenni? No.
No, and that was really hard for me.
Yeah, they didn't allow any kind of comment whatsoever. And we see that across the board. I mean, look at these school board meetings. Hardly any public comment. If you get off course, they shut you down. Then they go disappear behind executive session. Same thing with city councils. I mean, it's just a joke. We've got to be able to speak in a public forum type of setting in order to get something done.
Right. And I find it interesting that out of, if I stood up and gave the information that we've gathered at Oakleg in the complete presentation, I've narrowed it down to 30 minutes, but the complete presentation, it's an hour over that long. And the fact that they have one of my social media posts in that packet you were talking about, Jenni, one, and they're talking about fires, that is so easy for me to explain. My brother was a fireman for 20 years, retired. Anytime fires are mentioned regarding any subject, I find it fascinating and I want to look into it and see if there's anything to it. But that was an aside. And I would always tell the people when I gave the presentation, it's like, this is just a weird situation we got going on. We don't know what it means, but
Wendi,
then who's really spreading misinformation, disinformation? It's not the people.
Jenni, try it right here, Jenni.
I know it's crazy, but out of 2 hours worth of actual data, this is what they choose to tell people my presentation's about. So I find that hilarious because the secretary of the election board, Mr. Ziriak, was invited to come to my presentation in Kay County by their county election board official there. He absolutely refused. And then he didn't send anyone else from the state election board. So, you know, I can't explain that except to say that maybe they just don't want to know, or they would have to do something about it. You know,
well, but you know, the thing, when you are in a position, and this is kind of the definition of a tyrant. A tyrant isn't interested in what the people has to say. Yeah. The tyrant isn't interested in getting help or assistance from the people over whom he sees. He's not interested in that. He's interested in dictating, dictate this, dictate that, dictate this. And unfortunately, I think in a number of levels in Oklahoma state government, we have just engendered tyrants. These people have never been pushed back against. They don't like it. It irritates them because they should know everything and we're just the peons they represent. I mean, it is literally to the point where I don't know how you can't call some of these people tyrants.
Yeah. Well, if they are going into executive session and don't think that they need to release the minutes or the rationale for the decisions that they are making,
just transparency.
I would find it very difficult to argue with that, Jenni. I would not be able to defend or argue that point at all. Yeah. It's very concerning that this is what is happening. And this is the way people are treated when they come in and they point out information. And all it does is make people more suspicious. It does not tamp anything down. It does not stop any controversy. All it does is it fuels it. And that is something that they need to be aware of. And with the tools that we have and the Constitution that we have and that we know, and we know what our, you know, inherent rights are as spelled out in the Constitution, it's just going to continue. Nobody's going anywhere. I don't think Amber's going anywhere. I don't think I'm going anywhere. Jenni, you're not going anywhere. Michael's not going anywhere. We're going to keep having these conversations, and I'm going to keep writing up Substacks regarding Oklahoma elections. And I'm also writing up a series right now on a nexus between elections, cartels, and mineral deposits. I mean, there is so much that's going on
There
that
is.
people need to be
Well,
aware of.
Yeah.
well,
That
you guys,
it's astonishing.
and Oklahoma is not much different than the state of Oregon or the state of California. It
Right.
really isn't when you look at the grand scheme of things and how things are
Right.
being run. You're just saying Oregon and California, are states that are liberal leaning, right? Well, they're saying that Oklahoma is the most conservative state, on paper, in the nation. But really, so what's the commonality causing them to be similar?
Well, and I'm even going to
Right.
jump on the top of that and say we have tried for 3 years to get school board elections moved to the
Yeah.
November election.
Right.
You would think that if anybody gave a rat's butt about the lip service that they continually get on their stump speeches to get reelected, you would have thought that would have happened in the first 15 minutes. But
That
no, they'll put something else out there and they'll pat us on the head. Well, we gave you the grocery tax. Thank you so much for those $2. That's
Right.
awesome. What about my property? You still own my property. What about that?
Well, and I want, and you see all
Ugh.
these bills, things being passed. Where's the elimination of bills? Because
Yeah,
all that's happening in
exactly.
Oklahoma specific
100%.
is that they are taking more and more from the people and silencing us more and more. I mean, it's just
Yep.
absurd.
Yeah, they're trying to, Senate Bill 481, where we're hiding election officials behind this non-harassment or whatever,
Yeah.
that the other officials, not the state representatives apparently, or the senators, because Senator Jessica Garvin was in her committee meeting kind of saying, oh, I wish we were behind this, because somebody on the committee, there was a bill being debated in her committee, and they were talking about the journalists, whether or not they were going to put the journalists behind that wall as well. And somebody on the committee made the comment that, oh, well, us representatives and senators or whatever should be behind that too. And she said, oh yeah, absolutely, I wish we were, something like that. I'm paraphrasing it, but I was thinking in my head, who are we electing here? People that literally want to be not accountable to the people for things that the people don't like that they may be doing. Never mind that the people are the ones that give the Constitution authority that then makes the legislature. It's like the people are up here, guys. We're not down here. We're up here. So, the legislators are kind of down here too. But if you want to be hidden from the people, why are you doing things that are against their wishes? You're supposed to be representing them. Why would you think that you would get like a mob of people harassing you or bothering you? That should tell you something.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to address their concerns.
You guys, there's a lot going on, and my last little piece with this is, Senator Chris Kidd. It's recently come to light, Senate District 31. He was reelected in, what was that, 2020?
Yeah.
And funny, at minimum, he's been living out of district since 2018. He just happens to own a home that he doesn't live inside the district. And legislators knew about it. Other legislators.
It's just mind-blowing, the things that we get into. And as we go along and continue watching our legislators, what we hear. And by the way, just so you know, Jack Stewart in Canadian Academy, I love this guy. He actually dropped re-registration of Oklahomans again this year. He took Sean Roberts' bill and he dropped it. And it went into the committee he co-chairs with Jessica Garvin. But anyway, that bill never was heard in the committee. So re-registration was dropped again this year by Jack Stewart, to try to get everybody re-registered again, have to give photo ID in order to get the registration or something, or prove that you're a citizen to get the registration. And the excuses I heard from people were the same. Well, we can't because this judge in Kansas, we might run into problems here. I'm like, since when has Oklahomans been afraid of controversy? Number one, but number two, I don't think it applies. And number three, why are you so easily put off of doing what you know needs to be done? It's just astonishing to me, but it never came out of the committee. It was attempted again this year, and it was never even heard.
Well, we're going to have.
Well,
Go.
real quick, I know we're getting ready to close up, but I wanted to have Amber just reiterate from that first podcast, Amber, when you were on, it was one of the larger elections, maybe the 2020 election, when you said there was, I can't remember the exact number, but just the incomplete registration dates on those rolls. It was like in 50,000 or 60 or 100.
Yeah.
Or
So what that was at April, I think it's April, after every presidential election, mind-blowing is when the voter rolls are cleaned up, and they're not cleaned up, you know, to the extent that we would think they would be cleaned up. And from the data that was pulled after it was cleaned up, data pulled from July of 2021, 207,000 registered voters in the state of Oklahoma. Now that's active and inactive voters, but they're on the rolls, and you're just like, no registration dates at all. So the ones that did vote within the last, you know, several years, within the last 10 years, tell me how they're a valid elector and why their vote should have counted.
Wow. I mean, I just want people to understand how big that number is. I mean, that's literally just under 8% of the population of Oklahoma.
Yeah. Well, right. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. In this particular this race, that was contested, right, for the candidate, House District 66, as of April 21st, 2024, 810 registered voters in House District 66 do not have voter registration dates.
Right.
Why?
Right. Well, and that begs the other question too. You know, you said they went into executive session to talk about why they weren't going to, you know, allow Hayes to stay on the ballot or whatever. But the bottom line is, shouldn't they have said at that point in time, well, somebody should have said those aren't even valid electors because there's not even a date that they registered. You can't even consider them.
People don't know the law.
They don't know the law. They haven't been analyzing the data as much as we have, you know, necessarily. You may have people that are great, and I'll plug in the libertarian chair, kind of the commonality between himself, he doesn't know us, but himself, Wendi, and I, is we are all very intrigued with genealogy, and I've been doing it for almost 30 years as well, like the chair. And the reason why that's important, that may fall on people that don't have an understanding or enjoy that, is somebody that does genealogy has an analytical mind. You have to go in and collect the puzzle pieces and put them together and analyze information to make sure you have the correct person, because there's many people with different names, etc. So, fun fact.
Right. Yeah, well, and you've got to.
Okay, I'm going to stop us right now because we're almost at 2 hours. We've got people that I know. Don't get the four of us together. We'll never get off.
Right.
But I honestly, ladies, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. And I know, and we have had Hayes for U.S. House on today, who's been watching. And he said at one point, boy, sure, I'm glad you guys are handling this stuff. This stuff sure isn't my strong suit. So, you know, I do appreciate you guys doing that, because it is true. You know, I'm a biologist. I'm not a mathematician, so I can observe all day long, but numbers and me are not always best friends. So I really appreciate you guys doing this. And thank you as always for being on with us. And we will have you on again. It's an absolute. So thank you guys.
And Rick,
thank you guys.
And Rick too, who's still in the green room. God love him, who's been watching the whole time. So I'm going to let you go for now, guys, but we will talk more on this later. And thank you again for all that you do. You're just a blessing.
Appreciate you guys.
All right,
Thank
you too.
you.
We'll
Love
talk to
you
you
guys.
soon.
Thank
All right.
you. Bye.
Okay, gosh, I hated to get them off, but my goodness, it's hard for people to stay on an hour, let alone 2 hours. But that was a phenomenal broadcast.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, the issues are rampant. I mean, someone's got to expose them. They're not coming from anywhere else. I mean, we've got to write them up. We've got to be, we've got regular lives. We've got families, but we've got to be citizen journalists on top of it. We have to research this stuff. We have to publish this stuff. We have to stay on it because, like I've always said, Jenny, no one's coming to save us. We have to do it. We, the people, have to do it. The government's not going to do it. There's no white hat, conspiracy in the background waiting to help us. I mean, we have to do this ourselves and just stay on it.
well, and again, for those of you who are still left, God love you guys who are still on. You get like the badge of the year for being on for so long. But make sure you share this with people. And I will create several clips from this, which makes it a lot easier to share. So you can share just, sound bites of data with people that maybe will get them to come back to watch the whole thing. So I will do that. Please watch out for that. Please do find those. Please do share, because until we let people know what's going on, there's not going to be enough public outcry to do anything. But at this point in time, just the bottom line of we see our state seems way more interested in persecuting people who speak out than helping the people who are speaking out to come in and help solve the problems that we have. And that should be the biggest red flag of them all.
Yeah. Well, just to say you're red or to say you're conservative, that's all it is. It's just a word. It's just a phrase. Your actions matter. To go and hide behind executive session, to do all this stuff, and honestly, to just have thousands of administrative codes over just the regular law and constitution. I mean, we see it with all these policies and all these things. I mean, it's just complete joke.
Well, it is, and we've got to make it stop. So next week, we have several shows that are lined up, and I think I'm going to have to move some people around. But I think on Wednesday, we're going to have Mick Rosado come back on and talk about the health care bill. It did pass the Senate finally, the one that is the healthcare liberty bill, which prevents the government from getting basically into your business, and putting a clamp down on what you can do.
Getting more into your business, Jenny.
Oh yeah, more.
Getting even more. They're in our business pretty good. They want more access.
No, that's absolutely the case. So anyway, that has passed the Senate. We do need people to contact their House members and get their House members to vote for it. It will be going over there next week. We will have Mick on to talk about that. Hopefully she'll report good things, that it went through the House and it was an easy peasy lemon squeezy vote. So we're going to hope that it is the case. We will have subscribe to our newsletter. Go to www.rope2.org to subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll see everything. You'll get the clips that we publish. If you don't go and find them on our social media, you'll get the clips directly to your email box, and you can share those from there. So please sign up.
Yeah.
Anything else
for all the support, all the watchers, I think most importantly, I mean, we can always use the money, Jenny, but most importantly, I mean, you start sharing these clips. All we need is one of these clips to go semi-viral. Not for us to be so much better, whatever, not to get accolades, to just let people know. People have no idea how bad all this stuff is, how corrupt all this stuff is, how just how indoctrinating this whole system is once these politicians get in there.
Well, and that it's just honestly, government at this point is a protection racket.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, government is just a protection racket. They're protecting themselves. That's really all they're doing. And we have got to get between them and their self-interest and bring it back to the citizens. So, all right. Well, Michael, you have a lovely weekend. I'm actually hoping it's going to rain a little bit more. We need some more. But anyway, have a lovely weekend, and everybody else too. And we'll see you again on next Wednesday.